In the heart of a fog-covered town in northern England stood a forgotten little shop with a crooked sign that read Hollis and Daughters, Dollmaker since 1842. The shop hadn't opened its doors for more than 70 years, yet locals still crossed the street to avoid walking past it. Behind the dusty glass window sat rows of porcelain dolls, each one eerily perfect, their glass eyes reflecting the gray light of the street. They were old, untouched, and far too lifelike. Children used to dare each other to peek through the window, but few ever did twice. Some said the dolls blinked. Others swore that their heads would turn ever so slightly to follow whoever passed by. And on stormy nights, when the wind howled through the cracks of the shop's wooden frame, neighbors claimed they could hear faint giggles, the laughter of little girls long dead. But what truly made the town fear that place wasn't the dolls themselves. It was the story of the man who made them. Thomas Hollis, the last dollmaker of Ravensshire. Thomas Hollis had been known as a master craftsman, an artist who could carve a doll's face so perfectly that it seemed to breathe. He worked in silence, his shop filled with the soft ticking of clocks and the faint scent of varnish. But his talent came at a price. After the death of his only daughter, Eliza, something in him changed. Neighbors said he stopped attending church, stopped speaking to anyone at all. The laughter that once echoed from his workshop faded, replaced by the scraping of metal tools and the low hum of his own murmurs. Then, one winter evening, smoke was seen rising from his chimney for the first time in months. Through the frost-covered windows, a dim light flickered, and the silhouette of Thomas could be seen moving back and forth, working feverishly through the night. When morning came, he placed something new in the window display, a small porcelain doll with auburn curls and a white dress, so lifelike it made people stop in their tracks. The name carved on its base read, Eliza. At first, the villagers were touched. They thought the grieving father had made the doll as a tribute to his lost child. But soon, strange things began to happen. Children who lingered near the window claimed the doll's eyes weren't the same each day. Some mornings they appeared blue, others gray, and sometimes they glistened with what looked like tears. One boy swore he heard a voice whisper his name when he leaned close to the glass. His parents laughed until he stopped speaking altogether 2 days later. Thomas refused to explain the doll's creation. He stopped selling his work and would not let anyone inside his shop. Rumor spread that he'd locked the door from the inside and slept beside the doll every night, speaking to it softly as if to a child. And on the 12th night after its unveiling, a scream echoed through Ravensshire, sharp, raw, and human. By the time the constable arrived, the shop was empty, but the doll in the window was smiling. The investigation found no trace of Thomas Hollis. His bed was untouched, his tools neatly arranged, as if he'd simply vanished in the middle of his work. Only one thing was out of place. The doll, once pristine, now had a faint crack running down her cheek, like a frozen tear. The police took it as evidence, placing it inside a wooden crate in the constable's office. But by the next morning, the crate was open, the doll gone. The officer swore he heard soft footsteps during the night, like those of a small child wandering the hall. Weeks later, a farmer from the outskirts claimed he saw a pale figure walking along the road at dusk, a man holding something in his arms, singing softly. When asked what the man carried, the farmer replied, "A doll. I think she was smiling." Years passed, and the story of the dollmaker faded into rumor, until the winter of 1952, when the manor of the Harland family burned down. In the ashes, firemen discovered a single object untouched by the flames. A porcelain doll with auburn curls, her white dress immaculate. The inscription at her base was worn but still legible, Eliza Hollis. From that moment, the legend reignited. Families who took the doll in reported strange whispers at night, flickering lights, and the faint sound of a child crying in the dark. By 1960, the doll had changed hands 6 times. Each owner died mysteriously. Suffocation, drowning, or accidents no one could explain. The last person to possess her was a collector named Mr. Barrett. In his final letter, dated October 12, 1961, he wrote, "She moves when I'm not looking. I think she wants me to finish what Hollis started." That letter was found beside his empty chair. The doll once again was gone. Decades later, the doll resurfaced once more. In 2003, an antiques dealer named Margaret Linwood purchased a collection of old toys from an estate auction in Yorkshire. Among them was a small wooden crate, sealed shut with rusted nails and a faded tag that simply read Hollis. She thought nothing of it at first, until she opened it in her shop that night. Inside lay a porcelain doll with soft auburn hair, her dress perfectly preserved despite the passage of time. Margaret placed her in the front window display under the warm glow of a lamp. The next morning, she found the lamp shattered on the floor and the doll sitting at a slightly different angle, her head tilted as if watching the door. Margaret laughed it off, assuming she must have moved it herself. But that night, when she turned off the lights, she could have sworn she heard the faint sound of a child humming from somewhere inside the shop. Over the next few days, customers began to notice something strange about the doll. Some said her eyes seemed to follow them around the room. Others claimed they heard tiny footsteps coming from the back of the shop when no one was there. One woman, after staring at the doll too long, suddenly fainted, whispering as she fell, "She blinked at me." Margaret decided to lock the doll in the stockroom, wrapped in cloth. But that night, as she closed the register, she felt a chill sweep through the air. The lights flickered, and from the locked room behind her came 3 distinct knocks. Tap, tap, tap. When she opened the door the next morning, the cloth was on the floor, but the doll was sitting neatly on her desk, smiling. Margaret's health began to decline after that night. She complained of nightmares where a child's voice whispered, "Finish it, please." Her friends noticed she spoke to herself while working, muttering the same name over and over, Eliza. Soon, she started carving small wooden toys, something she'd never done before. The toys were beautiful but unsettling. Each one had the same face. When her assistant asked who they were supposed to be, Margaret only replied, "I'm not making them. She is." 2 weeks later, the assistant arrived to find the shop dark and silent. The front window was shattered from the inside. On the counter sat the doll, surrounded by half-carved figures, dozens of them, all smiling the same eerie smile. Authorities investigated but found no trace of Margaret. Her belongings remained untouched, and there was no sign of forced entry. The only anomaly was the temperature inside the shop. It was freezing cold, though the heating was still on. The police took the doll for examination, sealing it inside an evidence box. But the coroner who handled it reported feeling a sudden wave of grief before collapsing moments later. The doll was stored in a private archive, away from public access. Records show that 5 employees who worked near it later resigned, citing unexplained voices and uneasy dreams. One even burned his uniform, saying, "She keeps calling my name." Since then, the archive remains locked. But occasionally, at night, guards swear they hear music, a faint lullaby played on unseen strings. 20 years later, in 2023, a young documentary filmmaker named Evelyn Shaw discovered a file about the Hollis doll while researching urban legends for her horror series. Intrigued by the consistency of the reports, she reached out to the archives, requesting permission to film the artifact. Despite warnings from the curator, Evelyn was granted a one-night access permit. That night, she set up her camera in the dimly lit room, recording every detail as she unsealed the old evidence box. Inside, the doll looked exactly as described: flawless porcelain skin, auburn hair, faintly smiling lips. Evelyn chuckled nervously and said to the camera, "Well, Miss Eliza, ready for your close-up?" The footage recovered the next morning showed Evelyn adjusting her lens. Then a whisper, a small hand moved, the camera fell sideways, and the video ended. When Evelyn's crew failed to hear from her the next morning, 2 of her colleagues drove to the archive to check on her. They found the security guard waiting outside, pale and trembling. He refused to go back in, muttering only, "She's still talking in there?" Inside the archive, Evelyn's camera lay shattered near the evidence table. Her tripod was bent, and her recording light still blinked faintly, as if the battery hadn't yet realized she was gone. But Evelyn herself was nowhere to be found. On the video's recovered footage, investigators could see her standing before the doll, smiling nervously. Then, for a fraction of a second, the doll's head turned, smoothly, deliberately, toward the lens. Evelyn gasped. The next frame went black. When the police enhanced the final still, they discovered something that made them seal the file permanently. In the glass reflection of the doll's eyes, there was another figure standing behind Evelyn. A little girl in an old white dress, smiling. News of Evelyn's disappearance spread quickly online. Some claimed the footage was fake, part of a viral marketing stunt. Others insisted it was real, and that they could see faces in the static of the last few seconds of video. Within days, #HollisDoll was trending across forums, with users sharing grainy screenshots and analyzing every frame. But something strange began to happen to those who watched it repeatedly. They started reporting dreams of a dimly lit room, a small chair in the corner, and the sound of porcelain cracking. One woman posted a video of herself whispering, "She's in my mirror." The post was deleted an hour later. Her account went silent forever. A month later, the police quietly removed the remaining artifacts connected to the Hollis family from the town museum, including an old portrait of Thomas Hollis himself. The curator who assisted in cataloging the items resigned the following day, claiming the portrait's eyes moved when he wasn't looking. He told a local journalist, "It's not a painting, it's a window." Meanwhile, whispers spread among collectors that a second Hollis doll had surfaced, one that had never been accounted for. It was said to be in private hands, sold decades earlier under another name. Some claimed to have seen it in an online auction, its porcelain cheek cracked, its mouth slightly open as if mid-sentence. The listing vanished before anyone could trace it. In 2024, a London podcast called Whispers of the Past decided to investigate the story. The hosts, two paranormal researchers named Jonah and Claire, managed to contact a retired police officer who had worked on the Hollis case. He agreed to an anonymous interview. His voice, distorted on the recording, trembled as he said, "You think it's just a doll? Then tell me why we found fingerprints on the inside of her glass eyes." The episode went viral overnight. But days later, listeners began to complain of strange interference. Some said they heard a child's giggle between the hosts' voices. Others said that when they paused the audio at exactly the 13-minute mark, they could hear someone whisper, "Don't listen." By winter, the legend of the Hollis doll had taken on a life of its own. Paranormal enthusiasts from around the world flocked to Ravensshire, hoping to glimpse the infamous shop where it all began. But the building was long gone, demolished years ago. Still, locals avoided the spot where it once stood. Nothing would grow there, not even weeds. One night, a tourist set up his camera near the empty lot, determined to catch something supernatural. His footage, uploaded weeks later, showed nothing unusual until the final frame. For a brief instant, the reflection in his car window revealed a child's face, pale and cracked, smiling as if waiting to be found again. That night, rain battered the windows like angry fists. The family gathered in the living room, the atmosphere thick with unease. Emma clutched the doll tightly, whispering softly to it as though calming a frightened child. Suddenly, the fire in the hearth flared high, burning an unnatural blue. The shadows twisted on the walls, forming shapes that almost looked human. Then, from the doll's mouth, came a faint giggle, light, childish, and unmistakably real. The family froze. The laughter grew louder, echoing around the room, until the doll's head turned slowly, its eyes locking onto each of them in turn. "She's not supposed to be awake," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. Her father snatched the doll and threw it into the fire. But instead of burning, it sat upright in the flames, its porcelain face unscathed. Then, with a shrill cry, the fire went out, plunging the room into suffocating darkness. When the candles were relit, the doll was gone. Only black soot remained in the fireplace. The family searched frantically, calling Emma's name, but she had vanished too. They tore through every room, every corner, until at last, they found her standing in the attic, holding the doll again. Her face was pale, her eyes distant. "She doesn't want to be alone," Emma said flatly. "She says if you try to take her away again, someone else will burn." The following days blurred into one long nightmare. Doors opened by themselves, cold whispers drifted through the halls, and strange symbols appeared on the walls each morning. Emma stopped speaking to anyone except the doll, who now sat in a chair beside her bed. At night, her parents would hear two voices from her room, one soft and childish, the other low and distorted, as if coming from deep beneath the floorboards. One stormy night, her father decided to end it once and for all. He took the doll, locked it in an iron box, and buried it in the woods behind the house. But when he returned, Emma was standing at the door, soaked from the rain, holding the same doll in her hands. "You can't hide her," she said in a voice that wasn't her own. Her eyes glowed faintly red, and from the darkness behind her, something whispered. A name no one had spoken in 100 years. That night, no one in the house could sleep. The air itself seemed to throb with fear, every creak of the floorboards echoing like a heartbeat. Emma's mother sat awake, clutching a rosary that trembled in her hands. At exactly 3 in the morning, the clock stopped ticking. From Emma's room came a faint melody, a lullaby, played on an old music box they didn't own. The notes were off-key, warped, as though played underwater. Then came a whisper, "She's still cold." Her mother rushed in, only to find Emma sitting upright in bed, brushing the doll's hair with slow, careful strokes. The doll's eyes gleamed wetly, as if alive. The following morning, the father decided to take Emma away, to her grandmother's house, far from the cursed doll. But when they opened the front door, hundreds of small footprints covered the porch. They were too small for a child, and they led from the woods straight to the house. Among them was a single larger print, bare, deep, and clawed. The father froze as he noticed the soil on the doorstep. It was still wet, though it hadn't rained since dawn. From the hallway behind him came a small voice. "She followed you back, Daddy." He turned, but it wasn't Emma standing there. It was the doll. In sheer terror, he smashed the doll to pieces with a hammer. Porcelain shards scattered across the floor like shattered teeth. But each fragment began to twitch, trembling violently before dragging itself back together. Within seconds, the doll reassembled itself, cracked, bleeding from its joints, and smiling wider than before. "You broke her heart?" Emma whispered, appearing from the darkness. Blood trickled down her arm where she had been clutching something sharp. "Now she'll fix yours." The father screamed, but the lights went out, and when they came back, he was gone. Only the doll remained, sitting in his chair, wearing his wedding ring on its tiny porcelain finger. After that night, the house fell into silence. Neighbors claimed to see flickering lights in the windows and to hear faint crying echoing across the fields. Emma's mother wandered aimlessly, her mind fractured. She swore she still heard her husband's voice through the walls, whispering from somewhere deep within the house. One morning, she found a message carved into the floorboards beneath Emma's bed. "She's not done yet." Next to it lay the doll, now dressed in a tiny lace veil, like a bride waiting for her groom. Days passed, and the house began to rot from within. The wallpaper peeled, the mirrors cracked, and rats fled as if escaping something unseen. Emma no longer appeared human, her skin pale as wax, her eyes glassy and vacant. One evening, a priest arrived, summoned by the desperate mother. As he entered the room, the air thickened. The cross around his neck turned black. He raised his Bible, but before he could speak, Emma smiled. A lifeless, empty smile, and the doll turned its head toward him. "Too late," they both said in perfect unison. The priest dropped to his knees, gasping as his rosary melted in his hands. Outside, thunder roared, but inside, the house finally began to breathe. That night, the house moaned as if alive. The wind howled through every crack, carrying faint laughter that wasn't human. The mother locked herself in her room, clutching a candle, praying beneath her breath. The walls seemed to pulse with life, shadows shifting and twisting like things trying to crawl free. From the attic came a slow, rhythmic sound, tap, 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 as if something small was walking in circles. Then, the whisper returned, so close it brushed her ear. She wants you to see. Against her will, she stood, drawn to the sound, her body no longer her own. Step by trembling step, she climbed toward the attic, the candlelight flickering as if afraid. When she reached the attic, the door creaked open by itself. The air inside was cold, thick with the smell of rot and burnt wax. In the center of the room stood Emma, her nightgown stained with something dark, her hair tangled around her face. The doll sat in front of her on a small wooden chair, staring straight ahead. Around them, dozens of other dolls were arranged in a circle, each one cracked, eyeless, and facing inward. Emma lifted her head slowly and said, "She wanted friends." The moment the mother stepped inside, every doll turned its head toward her in perfect unison, the sound of their joints clicking like snapping bones. The candle fell from her hand, plunging the attic into darkness. A dozen tiny footsteps scurried across the floor, followed by the scraping of porcelain. Something cold brushed her ankle, then a sharp, childlike giggle echoed right beside her ear. When the candlelight flickered back to life, the dolls were gone. But Emma was no longer standing. She was sitting in the small chair, her head tilted to the side, her eyes glassy and empty. The doll now stood before her, impossibly tall, her porcelain face cracked open like a shell. "She's tired," said a voice from Emma's mouth. "Now it's your turn to play." The mother screamed, stumbling backward, but the door slammed shut behind her. The dolls emerged again, crawling out from the shadows, tiny, broken, and alive. Their porcelain faces twisted into grotesque smiles as they moved closer, whispering the same words over and over, "Stay with us." The air grew colder, her breath turning to mist. She tried to pray, but her voice cracked into sobs. Then the doll's hand reached out, touching her face. The touch burned like ice, and her skin began to pale, hardening, cracking, until her scream turned to silence. When dawn broke, the attic was empty, except for two dolls sitting side by side. Years later, the house stood abandoned, its windows shattered and its doors half buried in ivy. Locals called it the dollhouse. Sometimes, at night, a faint music box tune could be heard drifting from the attic, soft, sorrowful, and eerily familiar. Those who dared to enter swore they saw a small figure by the window, a child brushing the hair of a porcelain doll, both smiling with the same cracked grin. And if you listened closely, you could still hear a whisper carried by the wind. "She's still waiting to play."